Once upon a time there were two poetry books by Alysa Agnes. Introduction. What is poetry? The first part of my poetic work tells me that it is a romantic confession of feelings. At the same time, the second section tells me that it is playing with words. I combine important personal matters with poetic experiments in this one book. So poetry has two meanings for me: transferring feelings to the page of paper, not only those for the loved one, and that is a verbal construction. While being a poet is a lifestyle and the way you see the world. Love, Pain and Other Addictions is my first book that has been available so far, in old and new versions, only on one of my blogs and on Wattpad. In 2017, I tried to publish this volume, but life circumstances didn't allow me to bring this matter to any end. In 2019, I decided to edit the earliest works, and today, in July 2021, I am finishing this process. Romanticism was my main inspiration, but you must remember that it does not only mean Adam Mickiewicz's most patriotic drama. Romanticism is a phenomenon that consists of many factors, and the aspect of freedom and Polishness is just one of the many branches. I became more interested in other problems that I personally consider to be more interesting for a human of the 21st century. Students' Notes Open Eyes is a chapter of my poetry devoted to pieces written during Polish philology studies. That is from 2017 until 2022. Currently, I am faced with the challenge of writing a master's thesis about dialogues with romantic tradition. This is what is the most important to me, to talk about current affairs in a classicist way and submit experimentally different interesting achievements of old and modern poets. Without inheritance, there will be no future. It is impossible to completely break out from the old poetics. Just the romanticism cannot be denied. It would be the poetic suicide of a part of me. You just cannot do such things. At the very end, I'm putting a book made of aphorisms only. These 100 sentences are a poetical philosophical collection I find as a perfect complement to the last 10 years of my poetical life in this little book. These aphorisms were created from December 2020 until July 2022. And should poetry deal with the grey of everyday life? Not always. Poetry is art and beauty, but poetry can be a part of our lives every day. My poetry is for everyone, for young people who are just discovering themselves, and for older people who want to sink into the world of art and thought as well. 5th July 2021, Warsaw. Postscriptum. I have just finished writing on the aphorisms today, so I consider that the entire book is officially finished today, on 13th July 2022. The last revision of the whole collection is still waiting for me, but I must add that the introduction, written a year ago, has been supplemented today with the dates in parentheses. The master's thesis was indeed written, defended on 12th July. And now I have probably a different attitude to this book, poetry and romanticism, but I leave any comments to the future, because this is just the beginning of my writing career. 13th July 2022, Warsaw. The battlefield. It's time to come alive, like a phoenix. It's time to rise today, like a skyscraper. I had to compete with traumas. I've been asleep way too long. It's time to leave my shadow. I am coming. I am back today. Cursed poetry. Misunderstood cursed poetry. My dear, poor, and concert kids. Their blood is spoiled by ignorance, but I still believe in tolerance. Introduction for the English reader. Some poetry pieces were originally written in English, some in Polish. I tried to make a Polish context as clear as possible, adding references and explanation notes. If something is still unclear, you can always Google it. This book can be treated as a translation because at first I was compiling the book in the Polish language, and then it was my basis for this English version. Anyway, both language versions are ready, but I am still waiting for the publication of the Polish version. It is quite possible that the English version will be published first. Funny, is it not? August 2022, Warsaw. Vol 1. Love, Pain, and Other Addictions. Author's Manifesto. What do students do when the last lecture ends? Do they work? Do they travel? Do they go home to study urgently? Do they write? In my case, the last two statements I write nowadays. I write. I have been writing poetry literally my whole life, and prose lured me 5 years ago. I was extremely surprised by the negative reception of this book. The Polish book was published on Wattpad in 2019. These poems have been already appreciated and awarded in the past. Therefore, in the short text, I would like to present to readers my creative journey. Maybe a lack of context is sometimes harmful. Firstly, education, and then my own poetics. Those who are untrained in the fields of history of literature, literary theory, and poetics may skip this introduction. My first attempts at writing rhymes date back to primary school. Yes, it was the time when the creative initiatives for the children were already underway. Obviously, I took part in those. I remember that every month we were told what to write about, and later I could find my first poems in the corridors. Unfortunately, except for this memory, I have nothing more. Middle school. That is when I started writing more seriously poetry. When I was 13, I took part in the competition and I did it. My poem was published in the anthology. As a part of the competition, I went to Kazimierz Dolny for a writing workshop. But these were not my only workshops. In this volume, you can find poems from this period. The first one is about dance, and the second one is about the above-mentioned city. High school. I remember those times the best. The piece that opens this volume practically opened the door to a whole new world for me. I had already won a school competition in the first grade, and this fact gave me a pretty good reputation at school. My classmates made a hip-hop song out of it. It was quite a good school, named by and under the patronage of one of the most important Polish poets, Adam Mickiewicz. That is why I love Romanticism so much. I think so. I was the secretary at the school newspaper, and many of these poems were published in it. 2 of them were still hanging on the corridor wall the last time I visited the school. There were also 2 other competitions. One not won, but the 3rd place is also a nice distinction. The second was a festival. The second poem of this volume is the winner of this festival. I still remember when I heard the news. Another district appreciated my work. Wow, this fact was so meaningful that I even had my own Polish lesson about poetry. Now I study Polish philology at the best university in Poland, the University of Warsaw. I say it in case someone has not guessed it yet. And this is where I can finish my educational biography. Only the earliest pieces are included in this volume. They all express something important to me, so I do not hide anything in a drawer. My more recent poems will be found in the 2nd volume, Students' Notes, Open Eyes. Also, I was 13, 19 years old when I was writing these poems. It is worth remembering while reading this book. The second part was written at the age of 1923. Throw away inspired poems just because someone did not like them? For God's sake, no. I preferred to look at them again and change them a bit. I have never changed them before, and maybe it is worth refining those early rhymes. And studies really can open eyes. Well, what was Goethe doing? He was correcting and writing Faust his whole life. And Cyprian Norwid left several versions of the same poems. Why shall I not think about it too? Who said you cannot get inspired again while correcting? Why shouldn't I think about it too? Who said you can get inspired again while correcting? I've heard accusations that my strange punctuation is unnecessary. Yes, this form is quite common in the free verse type. It is extremely popular these days, but I have my own rules. I start with a capital letter, I do not put any marks at the end of the line, and it appears only when I believe it is necessary. The beginning is typical, everything must start somewhere. And then there is a disturbance evolution. The ending must be clean and open. It cannot facilitate the interpretation. When I use my beloved enchantment, figure out what is going on your own. Rhymes. In the past I used them more willingly. Now I come back to it again sometimes, but I prefer a free verse anyway. Rhyming seems to be a good way of building humor. The rhymes and the strophic structure do not always mean syllabic or accentual syllabic verse. In my case, you will not find jumps, beyonds, etc. And graphic structure may also suggest something, a shape of something, maybe. Studies teach a fresh look at well-known things, deepen knowledge, and wake people up in a humanistic way. I had my poetics founded a long time ago, but I had never realized it before. Of course, I was also coming to some things gradually. Adam Mickiewicz was educated in a classical style, and yet he was a significant poet in the epoch with completely different aesthetics and poetics. Just like him, I started with composing poems closer to the syllabic, to go through free verse, reflecting rebellion and chaos, and now I try to combine well-known poetics. It often depends on my mood, and I choose the model that seems to express the best what I want to convey. This is the secret of my style of writing, to combine, mix, and create something new. I am calling you, my poetic friends, to do the same. Maybe you write nicely, you get praised, but what does that mean? Duplicating models. People like well-known formulas, whereas well-known is delightful. Someone is criticizing you? Very good. You are original, and what is different does not impress right away. Let me explain with the example of Cyprian Norwid, another great inspiration to me. Well, Romanticism is my beloved era, the most inspiring. Anyway, how can we describe Norwid's poetics? Imagination, generally known facts, realistic and often rational, completely different from the romantics. At the same time, sometimes you can find romantic elements in his books. His inspiration was French Parnassianism, and that did not convince people at the beginning. It was too different and new then. Today he is a well-known poet in my country, but he died in poverty. I would even say, seemingly, it was with Mickiewicz. The only difference that he knew how to stand out. He did what he could, and even more. He was also poor. I think about Parisian days. He was a lecturer then, but somehow he lived in Paris anyway, so this is what Mickiewicz can teach us, to fight for our dreams. Yes, like Mickiewicz in his sonnets and Norwid in Vademecum, I like to use images that refer to certain feelings. Maybe speaking outright is also an interesting, unexpected procedure. Maybe a kind of grip of strangeness can also be simplification. I think I have already said everything that I wanted in this part. For the sake of simplicity and transparency, the volume is divided thematically into chapters, just like a novel. Each begins with a quote that I think best suits the content. Chapters include poems from various periods of my education, which are the implementation of the various themes I wrote about above. Now I can only wish you a pleasant reading. July 2019, Warsaw.